the Democrat vote in key parts of key states, much like Trump's 2016 victory over Hillary Clinton. Erol Morkoc is a spokesman and vice chair of external relations for Republicans Overseas, an official Republican Party organization for US citizens abroad. Morkoc, who was until recently based in St. Andrews, spoke to me over Zoom from his family home in Florida. I asked him how he was feeling at this late stage of the campaign.
Well, very optimistic. I would say that people have been asking me this question probably for the last 2 years, and I keep almost saying it's 50-50. And the reason why I say it's 50-50 is because it's going to come down to this last month.
Morkoc stresses that he feels confident that Trump has the right number of supporters in the right places to win another term. Remember, he said, Clinton lost with over 3 million more votes than Trump.
It's not like some incalculable majority, but it's enough to win in an electoral college because we have 50 states, and that's the most important thing about this country. It's not a direct democracy. It never was. It's a constitutional republic.
This remark, that America is not a direct democracy, is true. Voters cast their ballot for electors who nominate the candidate for president on the state's behalf. But the Republicans have been stressing this point throughout the build-up to this election, in a way which critics say belies a suspicion for what the larger voter turnout could mean for the party. In early October, a Republican senator from Utah got attention by simply tweeting the words, "We're not a democracy." Trump's rhetoric on voter fraud and on mail-in ballots has also been accompanied by actions, Professor Carman says.
In this election, we've seen states making it more and more difficult for people to vote by mail or vote early. So we've seen, for instance, in Texas, where they've reduced the number of places that you could drop off an early ballot to about 1 per county. Other states have made it more difficult in terms of, say, signature requirements and these sorts of things around voting by mail this election. So we've seen a politicization of voting by mail that we haven't really seen before.
Morkoc, whilst dismissive of attempts to predict the election on opinion polling, suggests, as Trump does, that Biden's victory might be in the postbag.
The only real poll, right, is in the election booth on election day when that curtain closes, which is a big part of why the unsolicited ballots and the mail-in voting is what is the only thing that we really fear could break into that. Because once you have the number on election day, so it's Trump wins by 20,000 votes. Okay, so we need to count 20,000 more votes. We can go out, we can collect those ballots, we can come back with those ballots. Because once you have the number, then you can always, if you count forever, you count till you win.
So, is mail-in voting a legitimate way to take part in this election?
Great question. And so it comes down to what type of mail-in ballots. Absentee ballots that are solicited, that is valid and fair. Nobody's questioned that. It's the unsolicited ballots. It's the mailing ballots in mass.
What Morkoc is describing is a system slightly different to normal absentee balloting. Spurred on by the pandemic, states have greatly expanded the vote-by-mail franchise to include what's known as universal mail-in. Unlike with Cassandra, in this system, ballots can be sent out to registered voters without the need to formally request them. This, Morkoc, Trump, and other Republicans claim, could lead to voter fraud, which they also claim could help the Democrats. I asked Professor Carman if there's any evidence that this is true.
None whatsoever. And there has been a substantial amount of academic research done on this, and there is no evidence at all that voter fraud is actually an issue in the United States and affects elections.
So could there be a significant difference with universal mail-in voting?
There's no difference in terms of sort of potential for fraud, if that's what they're concerned about. They claim that that leads to the potential of people, say, stealing ballots from post boxes because they know when these ballots are likely to arrive in people's post boxes, and you could steal those and you could fill them out and return them. Or you could have people harvesting ballots, meaning they go from door to door, and they do this particularly, say, at retirement communities. These are the urban myths that the Republicans have used.
Trump's incendiary remarks often get played down by his allies, who commend him on speaking freely and with passion, if sometimes imprecisely. I asked Morkoc if he agreed. Is it true that the only way Donald Trump could lose this election is if it is rigged?
I would say the only way that conceivably he thinks, well, he's describing rigged also as this non-absentee ballot system. So he's describing that, I think, the subtext of it, because he does speak in some broad strokes. And I think in the broad stroke term, I mean, I would be remiss to say that he couldn't lose the election. Like, I'm not, a sycophant or anything like that. Of course, it's a very close election. But if he was to lose in the way that he's describing how he thinks he would lose, then he would think it's a rigged election.
It's true that Donald Trump is known for his hyperbolic style. In 2016, as an underdog candidate, he also cast doubt on the possible election outcome. He refused at that time, too, to say whether he would honour the results. Could it just be his usual bluster? Is it naive to take a statement so literally? Could he actually achieve anything for himself by pursuing this strategy? Professor Carman.
So there's two elements here. One is what Donald Trump's rhetoric is already doing to how people perceive the election. And then another is the element of how Donald Trump, he and himself, acts at the election and after the election. So the first one of those is his rhetoric is already undermining confidence in democratic processes in the United States. That's fairly clear from the survey evidence. Donald Trump's supporters are far more likely to think that elections can't be trusted, institutions can't be trusted. Now, granted, his rhetoric resonates with them because they started off in a position of not being quite so trusting of the government. But his undermining of elections and the instruments of democracy is quite troubling, quite problematic. So you could expect that will we see people out demonstrating in the streets on the 4th of November? Yes. No matter what the outcome is, I think there are probably going to be large demonstrations, hopefully peaceful, in various cities around the United States. Then, as you say, there's the question about how Donald Trump himself responds to whatever the result is.
Election night this year won't be anything like election nights that have come before. Although voting has been underway for weeks already, most states won't begin counting the ballots until after the close of polls on the 3rd of November. This has the potential to set the scene for electoral chaos. The timings will be crucial.
So it'll go into the 4th, 5th, 6th. In some recent elections, it's taken several weeks to count up all the election absentee ballots. So it could be that you could have an extended period of time where you don't know. This is where the question about Donald Trump's reaction becomes crucial. If he, on say, at 11:59 on p.m. on the 3rd of November, declares himself the winner, then that's when you're going to end up seeing a massive destabilization of the system. And that's when you really have to start worrying. So how he reacts and how he responds, and importantly, how other Republicans react and respond to him is going to have a massive impact on how the election is even interpreted.
For as heightened as the stakes appear to have become for Democrats, the election has taken on an existential meaning for Republicans too. Morkoc describes the election as a referendum on the America First agenda. For him, as for voters like Cassandra, it's not simply a matter of winning or losing an election. It's about the future of the country itself.
This is a political war. In this political war, these sort of viewpoints are coming up. People are saying, well, if they were to pack the ballot boxes, America was hit by a foreign pestilence that people are very suspicious about, and on top of it, they packed the Supreme Court, which turned it into a political body. I mean, at some point, you can demolish the republic. The thing that's at stake is the concept of the nation state. It's a referendum on either the nation state or the sort of post-humanist globalist state. The idea that you would rather have 10 middle-class people in India if you had to reduce one middle-class person in America.
But, Morkoc insists, if Trump loses the election, his side in this political war won't repudiate the results or hold a Democratic victor in the same disdain as progressives have for Trump these past 4 years. Things won't get violent, he says. In any case, he says Trump is out for a clear victory.
So I actually have quite a lot of hope that even now, especially coming into the last month, that after everybody's seen all this and said and done, that we're going to win this in a landslide. And I think that's That's a comforting thought. But the other comforting thought is if we lose, we're not going to behave in some sort of petulant or violent way. We respect elections that are free and fair.
In many ways, the night of November the 3rd could only be the beginning of a process that will see the presidency placed in the hands of a system sketched out by the framers of the Constitution in 1778. It will be of no comfort to the Democrats that the nation's Supreme Court is likely to intervene, as the court's conservative supermajority is embedded just 8 days before the crucial night, with the confirmation of Trump's third nomination, Justice Amy Coney Barrett. In any case, it might turn out that the world looks back on the wild weeks before polling day as the relative calm before the storm. Professor Carman.
So, whilst the election can drag on for a week or two, there's a limit to how long the election can drag on. How that gets worked out is in the courts. And I think we could probably stand a good chance of some element of this election ending up going to the Supreme Court. The date of the inauguration is in early January, and that has to happen. Somebody will be inaugurated as the next president. Whether that is Trump, Biden, or whoever is the Speaker of the House, should there not be a decision as to whether it's Trump or Biden, it could be the next Speaker of the House who gets seated as the president, depending on the problems that come up. So the calendar does set specific dates where all of these problems have to be sorted out. So it will be an interesting couple of weeks after the 3rd of November to see how this all plays out.
Your vote gets counted. Make sure, because the only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that. It's the only way we're going to lose this election.
So I'm joined now